At first, I was suspect because I'm a man in a female-dominated environment. So there was a lot of, not a lot of talk, but it was just talk about me being gay. Only because I was a hairdresser. So you understand what I'm saying? So we have to be real mindful of the fact what a person does doesn't dictate anything other than that. You know, but people, I had guys, I walked up on a group of guys one day, and guy actually said, they were saying something, the guy said, yeah, well, you know, he gay, man. It was at the lounge in my salon, was right down the sidewalk. So I said, yeah, he gay. So I was walking up at the time. He didn't know me. So I walked up and I said, hey, man, what's going on? And I say, Frog, what's up? So the man said, you Frog? I said, yeah. I said, man, I thought you was, they said, that's what? I thought you was gay, man. You know, I said, but, so I asked him, I said, so why did you think that? This is what he said. Well, you don't find real men doing that. I said, well, you ever thought that it might take a real man to do it? You know, I didn't see anything sexual about my work. That had nothing to do with it. But because the sociology of people at that time had it fixed in their minds, women did women, men did men. And the only men that were doing women's hair at the time were gay. So automatically, I became gay, you know, in their eyes. But it's an environmental impact. It's not that I did anything. It's just that I represented something by what I did. I represented a gay man because I was doing all women's hair. I never looked at the difference between men and women. I always looked at it like it was hair we were dealing with, you know, not knowing that the society around me was looking at it. And women, I had women several times over the years to ask me. They would say, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. So they said, well, it's personal. I said, well, you can ask the question, and I still reserve the right to answer if I want to. Just ask me. So they would ask me if I was gay, you know, and I said no. I said, now can I ask you a question? They said, oh yeah, what? I said, what is it about me that made you think I was gay? And this is where I got this different perspective of how things work. They said, well, you normally don't find a man working on women unless he's gay. I said, so is that the definition of being gay? The profession I choose will dictate my sexuality? Is that, you know? Well, you just don't find a man. You see, I was more in a Renaissance type period in life. I wasn't trying to replicate. I was trying to create from the replication, you know? So what I was doing had nothing to do with who did it. I didn't look at whether or not being a man was gonna be, you know what I mean? So, and then, I don't know if this is in the podcast, man, but for a while, once I got in, and after the first couple of years or so, and I wasn't married, I don't think, at that time, I just went crazy. So then they knew I wasn't gay. That went on for a while. So I had a lot of growth issues in my life over a 50-year period, you know? So my life was lived out in the salon with living people. I have clients I've known for 30, 40 years. You know, I knew their lives, I knew their children. I married one of their children. You know what I mean? So I was very intricately involved in the female community of the city. I never hung out with the guys, because once I got off from work at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I didn't go nowhere. I wasn't out. I went to the class for 6 day dance every year. That was about all I did. Because I don't want to, I was around people all day. I don't want to go somewhere after I get off from work and sit up in a room, always on alert. Hey, Mr. Frog, hey. So I really just kind of was a recluse after work, you know, and then